Hi everyone. So let's talk about the shadow of the box. The box. And here is a beautiful visual representation of this energy. This comes from the Wild Unknown Archetypes Oracle deck. Now this energy is really interesting because this is essentially a shadow manifestation of sacred space. It's like the flip side of sacred space. It is when sacred space starts to become too confining, and where the space we have created for ourselves ends up forcing us to be much smaller than our souls are calling us to be. So some wonderful representations of the box. We can think of this like the womb. As fetuses grow into their whole human selves and are ready to be born, they must leave the womb. The womb becomes a box if they were to stay there. Same thing with the butterfly and the cocoon, right? The butterfly has to leave so it can stretch its wings and become who it is meant to become. If the butterfly were to stay in the cocoon, it would become a far too confining box. So this is the case for our own healing evolution as well. Sometimes we need a smaller confining sacred space when we are going through an intense healing or transformational process. And then the moment arises when that transformation is complete for us to leave that small sanctuary. And if we don't, if we stay there because we believe that we need it in order to be safe, that's when it merges into its shadow manifestation of the box. Now, this is a topic that I have personally been exploring a lot for myself this last moon because I have been emerging from a multi-year transformational rebirth process. And so I have really had to ask myself these questions of what really is creating safety now for me in my life. Because that is what we need to ask ourselves when we are grappling with the shadow of the box. We have to go back and question and redefine safety for ourselves. Because what provided safety when we were in the womb, in the cocoon, no longer is creating safety, and it's actually very well may be doing its opposite. Because we can become so miserable when we are confining ourselves so small and squishing ourselves so small when we have, in fact, expanded so greatly in size. So it's important during this moon to also look at and think about, am I called to actually expand my sacred space? And to go back to the guardian archetype and think about our boundaries. Do we need to consider refining our boundaries and shifting the criteria of what we allow into our sacred space? So all good stuff to consider during this moon as we launch ourselves into spring and really launch ourselves into a new evolutionary cycle and expand who we are becoming and who we are, how we want to presence ourselves in the world.